Have you ever felt so lonely that no words could capture it? You're still surrounded by friends, colleagues, and family. You still laugh, talk, and seem fine. But there's a smoldering silence within, unseen and untouched by anyone. We grow up without ever being taught how to be alone. From childhood, we're encouraged to fit in, to conform, to be shaped to live under the gaze of others. But then, at some point in life, often when everything around us seems perfectly normal, a strange stillness begins to spread from within. The veil of pretense falls away. This is the silent, profound loneliness, deep as an abyss, cold as stone, which Carl Jung believed is precisely the moment when the true self begins to emerge. No longer the persona, but the self, vibrant, creative, wild, and untamed. But what awaits us in that desolate wilderness? And is it possible to find light within that very darkness? In today's exploration, we'll uncover why loneliness is not a state to avoid, but a secret gateway leading to the deepest essence of your being. Stay with us until the end, because I believe, on the other side of that darkness, there's a version of you that you've never dared to touch, but have always longed to become. And that person is you. Number 1. Understanding loneliness in Jung's philosophy. In modern society, loneliness is often seen as a crack to be concealed, evidence of failure in connection, a void to be filled as quickly as possible with chatter, work, social media, or transactional relationships. People fear loneliness like a dark room, not because of what's inside, but because they don't know what might appear when the light fades. But for Carl Jung, loneliness is not the emptiness of external things, but the fullness of oneself. He distinguished clearly between aloneness and loneliness. A person can sit in a crowd and still feel loneliness to their very bones because they cannot express their authentic self, which is loneliness. Conversely, a person can withdraw from the world and, in that state, feel as if they've come home, as if they're finally hearing their voice after years of being drowned out by societal noise, that is, aloneness. Jung viewed loneliness as a psychological landscape, not a barren desert, but an invisible laboratory where your soul becomes both the subject and the observer. Without the external light shining in, you're like a photographic negative dipped in developing chemicals. Everything hidden in the shadows gradually emerges, sharp and undeniable. Loneliness, in Jung's view, is the opportunity to dismantle the layers of masks we've accumulated over the years. The mask of the dutiful child, the perfect partner, the version that makes others comfortable. The truth is, these are not us. They are temporary constructs for survival in the world, but if we cling to them too long, they become prisons. And those prisons are painted in the sweet hues of acceptance, making it hard to realize we've lost our freedom. From a psychological perspective, building a persona is natural. Children learn to read adults' emotions, pleasing their parents to be loved. Young adults bend to models of success to avoid falling behind. We adjust, adapt, blend in, all to survive. But Jung warned, if we never step out of these costumes, we'll never know what our true form looks like. And loneliness, for him, is where we begin to shed them. Have you ever turned off your phone, paused your work, sat alone in a quiet room, and felt so restless you had to get up and find something to do? That feeling isn't boredom. It's because you're not used to being alone with yourself. The mind, so dependent on external feedback, panics when the world's noise stops, like a child lost in a supermarket. Behind that restlessness lies a deeper psychological mechanism, FOMO, fear of missing out. It's not just the fear of missing information, opportunities, or trends, but the fear that if we're not connected, not present, we'll vanish from the world's map. In a society where "I'm busy" is a badge of personal worth, sitting still, doing nothing, not updating, not participating, creates a subtle guilt, as if you're falling behind. Jung didn't see this as a flaw. He saw it as a doorway. When we step through that initial unease, a new space opens, a space where the authentic self can speak, uninterrupted by others' expectations or judgments. In that silence, a form begins to emerge, no longer an imitation of someone else, but the raw, original image of you, the self. The fascinating thing is, the more we understand loneliness correctly, the less frightening it becomes. Jung once likened loneliness to a sealed room where daydreams enter and become rituals. It's where we reconnect with vivid imagination, creative unconscious, and forgotten parts of the soul. Many great creators, from Virginia Woolf to Beethoven, described loneliness as fertile ground for exploring the unknown within themselves. Thus, understanding loneliness is about freeing it from its image as a prison and seeing it as a gateway, a place where we're not left behind, but invited to return. Number 2, the creative void. If loneliness is the gateway that leads us away from the world of masks and social feedback, then the creative void Carl Jung described is the first land we step into after crossing that threshold. No longer under the stage lights, without applause or the familiar rhythm of life, we fall into a strange space where everything that once defined us suddenly dissolves. Yet, contrary to its empty appearance, this realm is brimming with potential. Jung called it the place where the old has died, but the new has not yet been born. Imagine wandering into a completely white room. No windows, no objects, no sound. You stand there, stripped of any anchor to define yourself. You're no longer someone's child, this or that person, or someone in others' eyes. There's no mirror to reflect you, no reminder of your usual role. Just you in a barren space that blurs time and direction. This is the creative void, the space between what was and what is yet to come. For many, this is a moment of crisis. In reality, you may have tasted this feeling during a major life event, losing a job, a breakup, a shift in religious identity, or a shock that shattered your inner foundation. A once successful professional realizes they no longer love their work. A parent who lives for their family feels lost when their children leave. Someone who believed in an ideal finds it crumbling. When there's nothing left to cling to, we fall into this void, where nothing remains and nothing has yet emerged. You may not have named it. But if you've felt this, you've stood on the threshold of transformation. Modern psychology calls this a liminal space, a transitional zone between two states of being. In ancient cultures, this was when the hero entered the deep forest, the monk retreated to a cave, or the pilgrim began a long journey with no clear destination. But Jung went further. He didn't see this as just a phase, but as a psychological dimension where the ego is stripped away to allow the self to take shape. Like a seed that must rot in the earth before sprouting, the ego must dissolve in this void to let something deeper rise. This is not a comfortable time. On the contrary, It often brings disorientation, confusion, anxiety, and even depression. Many who fall into the creative void describe it as drifting in a sea of fog, where everything feels blurred, meaningless, as if the values they lived for were illusions. But Jung would urge you to face that crisis and say, stay there. Don't rush to escape by reverting to old patterns. Don't grasp for new meaning just to avoid the emptiness. Because in that very emptiness, something truer is quietly forming. Jung believed the creative void is the sacred birthing room of the soul. Just as winter in nature isn't death, but a dormancy that gathers strength for spring's bloom, this empty state isn't failure, it's conscious preparation. Its pain doesn't stem from meaninglessness, but from the lack of language clear enough to describe what's forming. It's vague, nameless, ineffable. The only thing we can do is endure it with awareness. Picture the creative void as a darkroom in vintage photography. In the darkness, undeveloped photos are soaked in chemicals, waiting for details to emerge. Turn on the light too soon, and the image burns. Pull it out too quickly, and it's blurry. The human soul in the creative buried doesn't mean being erased. On the contrary, these elements lie there, like molten lava simmering beneath thick earth. And when the external order collapses, when the masks no longer hold, they begin to rise. Picture the mind as a luxurious house, where the living room is always kept pristine for guests. But behind it lies a dark basement where you've tossed emotions deemed bad. Anger, jealousy, envy, lust, weakness. You don't want anyone to see it, not even yourself. But one day, the power goes out. The brightly lit living room vanishes. The only light left flickers from the basement. Now you have no choice but to descend and open the door. That's when the shadow appears. In everyday life, the shadow may manifest through emotions we despise in others. Jung called this the projection of our shadow onto the external world. For instance, we may rage against someone's selfishness not because they're truly awful, but because they touch the selfish part of ourselves we've always tried to deny. Or a man who prides himself on being rational controlled and disciplined, might suddenly be haunted by dreams filled with instinctual, violent or sexual imagery, not because he's changing, but because the repressed instincts, long suppressed, are finding their way back. The shadow is not an enemy. Jung saw it as an exiled twin sibling. It carries a vital life force we've rejected. Within that darkness lies not only violence or desire, but also wild creativity, untapped courage, and dreams once stifled for being unacceptable. This is why Jung emphasized that confronting the shadow isn't about destroying it, but reconciling with it. A woman or man taught their whole life to be kind might panic when their first wave of anger surges, as it threatens the proper image they've built. But if they dare to look deeply into that anger, they might uncover something sacred, a boundary crossed, a value trampled, a silenced voice demanding protection. If you've ever experienced a moment like this, when a rejected emotion suddenly rises and makes you see yourself differently, you can share that experience with us. Sometimes, simply writing it down is a first step toward illuminating the shadow. Confronting the shadow, according to Jung, is an inner ritual no one can perform for you. It's not mere rational analysis, but a process of recognition, acknowledgement, and integration. That is, seeing the shadow, naming it accurately, and inviting it to become part of your being, instead of banishing it back to the unconscious. This requires a rare strength, bone-deep honesty, and the acceptance that we are not only light. Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. No one finds true light without daring to step into their darkness." This may sound paradoxical, but it's the foundational paradox of every journey toward healing and self-understanding. For only by facing the parts you've hidden can you become whole. No longer a falsely good person, no longer a moral actor by others' standards, but a living being, authentic, full of contradictions, yet unified from within. And in that moment, you begin to grasp a profound truth. Much of what you once called evil isn't demonic, but neglected parts of yourself yearning for love and recognition. Number 4. Loneliness as the gateway to individuation. Strangely, when you've lingered long enough in the darkness, quiet enough to hear all the buried voices, that silence ceases to be empty. It begins to have a rhythm, a direction. Like a seemingly silent piece of music, the more you listen, the more you realize a subtle melody is playing, not loud, not predictable, but steadfast. That melody doesn't come from the outside world. It's woven from within, from threads of sound only you can hear. And that's when the true journey begins. The journey to become yourself, not by adding, but by shedding. Jung called this process individuation, a term that sounds abstract, but carries the weight of a lifetime, when life is no longer lived as a reflex, but as a choice. Individuation, for Jung, isn't self-improvement in the modern sense, not about accumulating achievements, building a personal brand, or boosting performance. It's not about being better or more admired. It's a slow, quiet, often chaotic process of peeling away the labels that don't belong to you and gradually realizing who you are when no longer fused with the collective. In other words, individuation doesn't make you different to stand out, but makes you whole from within. Imagine a rough stone worn randomly by wind, rain, and time. Its fragments fall away, its scratches formed by unchosen collisions. That stone is our ego, shaped by clashes with the world, by the need to become someone to be accepted. Individuation is active sculpting. For the first time, you take the chisel in hand and begin shaping from within. Not for others' admiration, but to reach the true form of your soul, always there, just covered by the dust of life. Loneliness serves as a spiritual incubator for this journey. Only in the absence of external noise can you hear the small but persistent voice of your inner self. Individuation demands private space, space to try, to fail, to repeat, to question, to accept that you'll stray from the maps of those who came before. Many feel lost in this phase, as there's no guide, no template to cling to. But that very lack of a map forces you to develop an inner compass, a sense of right-wrong, true-false, shouldn't that comes from within, not from external frameworks. A clear example is someone who leaves a stable, high-paying job to follow a path no one understands, making art, growing plants, studying meditation, and writing a book. They're often seen as lost, dreamy, or even a failure. But in many cases, they're not falling into a void. They're embarking on individuation. They're stepping away from the collective structure, where everyone shares the same values, the same standards, to explore values that truly resonate with their soul. And this isn't a retreat from humanity. On the contrary, it's becoming a human who can offer something unique to humanity. What about you? Have you ever wondered whether the things you pursue truly stem from an inner calling or are just a well-fitted garment sewn for you by the world? Of all the choices you've made, how much is truly yours, and how much is what you learned to avoid feeling lost? Jung stressed that individuation is not synonymous with selfishness. On the contrary, those who walk this path often feel a deep responsibility to the world, not to please, but to live authentically, to give what is true. The self, having integrated the shadow and passed through the creative void, no longer craves to stand out, but to be honest. Honest enough to fail in their way, to be imperfect, to dream dreams no one else dares, and to respond instinctively to life without seeking the crowd's approval. Modern psychology confirms what Jung said nearly a century ago. Humans are only truly healthy and happy when living as unique individuals, not assimilated. Many psychological disorders today, vague anxiety, functional depression, inner emptiness, may be symptoms of living too long in a role, disconnected from the authentic self. Only by daring to step out of the collective comfort zone, enduring the feeling of being lost, different, or misunderstood, does the gate to individuation begin to open. In ancient cultures, this journey was often described as the pilgrimage into the deep forest, where the seeker left the village, bid farewell to the community, and faced nature, darkness, and trials alone. Not to become a hero, but to become themselves. And only by going deep enough into the forest, losing direction, being stripped bare, experiencing utter loneliness, did they find the only path out, the path within. Individuation, ultimately, doesn't end in a diploma, a status, or recognition. It ends each time we're brave enough to say no to what's false and yes to what's true, even if it makes us seem out of place or vague in others' eyes. For the greatest freedom is to live as yourself, and the greatest loneliness is to live forever in the shadow of another. Number 5. Connecting with the collective unconscious. As one delves deeper into the journey of individuation, it might seem that the further they go, the more isolated they become. They gradually drift away from collective norms, from external voices, and step into a realm of light and shadow that defies naming. Yet, in one of Carl Jung's most profound and paradoxical insights, the deeper we venture into our essence, the more powerfully we connect with something universal, something beyond ourselves, the collective unconscious. It's as if, by digging far enough into your soul, you touch an underground stream, not just yours, but one that belongs to all of humanity. Jung believed that beyond the personal psyche, where individual memories, experiences, and beliefs reside, humans carry a deeper, invisible, and immensely powerful psychological layer. This is the dwelling place of archetypes, universal images, symbols, and situations that recur across myths, religions, dreams, and the human imagination throughout time. The hero, the sacred mother, the betrayer, the savior, death, rebirth. These are not specific characters, but spiritual manifestations that have accompanied humanity since the days of painting on cave walls. Imagine the collective unconscious as an ancient library where each person, upon birth, is granted a membership card. You may never know you hold this card, but in moments of profound silence, when the mind moves beyond ordinary logic and engages through intuition, imagery, or symbols, you might suddenly read books no one ever taught you. This is why a young woman who has never read mythology might dream of being swallowed by the deep sea, an image that aligns perfectly with myths of goddesses like Inanna or Persephone. The collective unconscious doesn't speak in words, but in sensations, symbols, and recurring patterns found in dreams, art, and even pathology. In modern life, you may have brushed against the collective unconscious without realizing it. When a mother holds her newborn for the first time and tears fall, not from personal joy alone, but from a sense of participating in something timeless and sacred. That's not just individual maternal love, but the archetype of the mother coming alive. When you hear an ancient piece of music and are inexplicably moved, as if touching something that existed before you, it may be a memory not solely yours, but of countless people who lived, loved, and lost over thousands of years. Jung likened the collective unconscious to a psychic ocean where each individual is a tiny drop, seemingly separate but always nourished by a vast sea beneath. The paradox is this: only by detaching from societal constraints, by daring to be alone and stepping into your realm of light and shadow, can you truly feel this connection. It ceases to be an idea and becomes a living experience. You are not alone because the pain you carry, the questions you ask, the obsessions you wrestle with, may be chapters already written by countless souls before you. Modern psychology refers to this as intergenerational resonance, the phenomenon where traumas, desires, or behavioral patterns can be passed down through generations like invisible codes. A man who fears losing control without knowing why might carry the unresolved memory of a grandfather who endured war. A woman who never dares to speak her truth may be reliving the fears of mothers and grandmothers silenced in past societies. Jung went further. He believed these memories are not only transmitted through bloodlines, but through a shared unconscious layer, like a spiritual cloud we're all connected to. The deeper you individuate, the more you become a finely tuned node for sensing the collective unconscious. The most powerful creations, prophetic dreams, and sudden intuitions often arise at this intersection, where the ego no longer controls, but the self begins to channel a journey where the final door leads to death. And Jung did not shy away from it. On the contrary, he walked straight toward it. Number 6. Facing death and the yearning to live authentically. Like all who have lived, loved, struggled, and vanished into dust, we too must depart. And this is the final door in the inward journey, facing death. But for Carl Jung, this is not an ending but a pivotal moment, where truth is purified, and the yearning to live authentically is ignited most fiercely. Not everyone is ready to face death, for it shatters all illusions. You may live in a relentless whirlwind, building an image, chasing goals. So busy you have no time to ask what is real. But one day, you touch the invisible chill of death, in a dream, a diagnosis, a moment when a loved one is gone. All noise ceases, all roles fall away, and an inescapable question arises. Am I living by my own choices, or am I wasting my life on others' expectations? Jung saw death as a spiritual event, more than a biological one. He believed most people live in an illusion of immortality, not because they think they'll never die, but because they live as if death isn't in the room. A life without death as a companion is a shallow one, for then every choice feels deferrable. Death, for Jung, is the substance that clarifies what truly matters, like a flame illuminating a map of your life, revealing which paths lead to authentic living and which are mere loops. In reality, many experience their deepest awakening when near death, not just physical death but symbolic death, a breakup, a profound loss, bankruptcy, or the collapse of a religious belief. These moments can tear apart every layer of identity built up, but that very stripping creates space for something truly alive to emerge. Like a forest that regenerates after a fire, death, whether metaphorical or real, can pave the way for a deeper, truer life. Jung believed that only by sensing death can people break from their roles and truly connect with their soul. Someone who lived for expectations, upon learning their time is short, might suddenly return to painting, music, or nature, not for success but to live. Someone who chased perfection, nearing death, might learn to love their incompleteness, for there's no time left to perform, no fear of judgment, only the fear of not living one day fully. Jung wrote, "No tree can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell." In this understanding, we don't fall into despair, we awaken. For when you know your time is finite, every choice gains value. Apologies no longer wait, acts of love are no longer postponed, and you begin to live with an unprecedented clarity, a clarity that not only deepens your life, but lightens it. For you no longer carry what is untrue. In the silent presence of death, a small flame ignites. The yearning to live authentically. Not to live correctly, beautifully, or impressively, but to live with no regrets when you depart. No longer denying parts of yourself. No longer repeating behaviors just to be accepted. No longer delaying true happiness out of fear of change. Only a simple question remains, yet it can transform your entire life. If today were your last, how would you live to be worthy of yourself? Number 7. Freedom and responsibility. That question will make you live as if every moment is drafting the testament of your soul. And from that very depth, something else begins to sprout. Freedom. Not the freedom to do everything, but the freedom to live true to yourself, because there's nothing left worth trading away. And alongside that freedom, like the other side of a coin, lies something not easily swallowed: responsibility. Carl Jung understood this better than anyone. That true freedom isn't as light as we imagine. It is a sacred burden every soul must bear when choosing to live authentically. When still bound by the persona, the social mask, humans live in a sweet dependency. We blame circumstances, make excuses for roles, for norms, for fear of rejection. We may be exhausted, but we're safe, because our choices are within the framework. But when we pass through the creative void, reconcile with the shadow, embark on individuation, and face death, the old milestones lose their meaning. It's like emerging from a maze to stand in an open field. No barriers, no signposts. You can go anywhere, but you can't blame anyone if you choose wrongly. That is the essence of true freedom. No limits, but no one else to take responsibility for you. Jung called this the moment when humans begin to live by consciousness rather than instinct. No longer reacting like a machine to expectations, but making deliberate choices rooted in the deepest parts of the inner self. This sounds noble, but in reality, it demands a rare courage. The courage to accept that you alone are responsible for your life, for what is lived, and for what is missed. No more, "They didn't let me." No more, "I wasn't allowed." Only, "What did I choose? And do I dare live with the consequences of that choice?" In modern psychology, this is described as a shift from an external locus of control to an internal one, from an external frame of reference to an inner one. But for Jung, it's not just a technique for self-improvement. It's the threshold of an awakened life. For only when you realize that freedom isn't a privilege, but a consequence of psychological maturity, do you truly begin to live as the creator of your reality. Imagine you're the captain of a ship. Self waiting for you to choose it each day. That is the tragedy, and also the beauty of humanity, according to Jung. And if there is any salvation, it doesn't come from outside. It begins the moment you look in the mirror, and for the first time, no longer avoid your gaze. Carl Jung never promised this journey would be easy. He never sugarcoated the shadows. But he placed a map in our hands, not to avoid pain, but to understand that pain has a shape, a path. And if you're brave enough to walk straight into it, you'll find the most sacred thing. A life chosen consciously, a self no longer divided, and a freedom no one can take away because it never came from the outside. And if today you pause just for a moment to listen to the smallest voice within you, what would it say first? And do you have the courage not to ignore it anymore? For the journey begins and ends in the same place, where you stop running from yourself. And only you can know whether you're living a life of meaning or merely existing amidst imagined applause. Do you realize that most of the suffering in life doesn't come from what happens, but from the frantic effort to make everything certain? We try to plan, try to predict the future, as if grasping the answers would make life less anxious. But it's precisely in the moment we believe we've seized control that we become controlled by fear. Fear of change, fear of mistakes, fear of losing our way. Society makes us believe that certainty is a sign of maturity, of success, of wisdom. But Jung saw the opposite. He understood that life operates not according to the order of reason, but according to the principles of the unconscious, the place harboring impulses, images, and symbols that we cannot arrange or control. And only when we accept stepping into that shadowy realm, where there are no more answers, do we begin to understand what truly governs us. So what really happens when you stop demanding answers and start trusting the process of not knowing? What changes when you no longer try to control, but choose to let go, allowing life to guide itself? That journey is not for the faint of heart. It requires you to face the void, where all concepts of the ego dissolve, and only absolute honesty with oneself remains. But it is there, in the midst of the fog of uncertainty, that you will discover a different kind of freedom. The freedom to not know, yet still be at peace. The question is, do you dare to step into that uncertain zone to see that when you stop trying to understand everything, life naturally becomes easier? Part 1. Analyzing Uncertainty Through Jung's Lens. Carl Jung once said, "The modern man no longer sees God because he no longer looks inward." That statement, seemingly religious, is in truth a profound psychological diagnosis. We have lost the capacity to tolerate not knowing, and thus lost our connection to the deepest part of ourselves. When we fear uncertainty, we are not just fearing the future. We fear our own unconscious, the place containing the aspects of life that reason cannot control. Jung called the unconscious the dark side of the moon of the soul. It is always there, silent, directing our inner movements, whether we will it or not. But the ego is different. The ego wants order, wants definition, wants everything in hand. It hates ambiguity because ambiguity makes it feel small, useless. And so we try to control everything, work, others, even our own emotions, as if keeping everything in sight will make us safe. In reality, it is merely an illusion of power, a subtle way to avoid touching the truth that we do not control our lives. Jung understood that behind this obsession with control lies an ancient survival instinct. From prehistoric times, humans survived by predicting weather, beasts, dangers. Our brains are programmed to seek certainty because, in the wild world, not knowing could mean death. But in the modern era, when the external lion has vanished, a new predator emerges within us. Anxiety itself. It no longer chases us with claws, but with unanswered questions. Am I on the right path? What if I fail? What if I lose that person? the brain still reacts as if facing real danger. Only this time, we cannot run. And so, we become trapped in chronic tension, an invisible battle against the uncontrollable. According to Jung, it is in this very war that the ego swells ever larger, while the soul shrinks. The ego wants to dominate. The soul only wants to be heard. And when the ego takes the entire stage, humanity falls into inner disconnection. They may appear highly successful, productive, and national, but deep inside, they feel empty. Because the soul does not seek certainty, it seeks meaning. The ego needs plans. The soul needs experiences. The ego wants to know in advance what will come. The soul wants to go through it to understand itself. Therefore, when we live by the ego's map, without heeding the soul's call, life, no matter how ordered, becomes meaningless. Jung did not advise us to eliminate the ego. He only warned that when it becomes tyrannical, we lose balance. Think of the moments of uncertainty you have endured. Breakups, unemployment, sudden changes. At first, we collapse, but afterward, if we have the courage not to flee, we notice something strange. It is precisely in that emptiness that a new version of ourselves begins to form. Uncertainty is like fallow ground after the harvest ends. Barren, empty, but also the place where new shoots can grow. Jung called that moment the beginning of the individuation process, where the individual begins to detach from the collective mold and return to their true essence. The difficulty is that we are not taught how to navigate that shadowy zone. Modern culture venerates knowledge over intuition, reason over feeling, and success over experience. We are trained to know, not to feel. But Jung reminds us that the unconscious does not speak the language of reason. It speaks in symbols, dreams, and vague emotions. When you find yourself uncertain, anxious, it is not a sign of weakness, but a message from the unconscious. It is time to listen. In truth, the deepest part of you still knows what it needs. It is just that the voice is too faint to hear amid the clamor of reason. A person who always tries to understand everything is often one who dares not feel. They live like someone standing on the riverbank, noting how the water flows, forgetting that life only truly begins when you dare to step into the current. Uncertainty is that river. It sweeps away what is outdated and returns to you a purer state. If you only stand on the shore, you will never know if the water is warm or cold, calm or turbulent. Jung believed that only through direct experience with the unknown does a person awaken. Thus, for Jung, uncertainty is not the mind's enemy, but the soul's teacher. It teaches us humility, teaches us to trust the natural rhythm of life, and teaches us to relinquish the illusion that we can understand everything. Just as the night is necessary to see the stars, the obscurity is necessary to recognize the inner light. For in every chaos, there exists a secret order, and only when we dare to look into it do we understand that uncertainty is not disorientation, but a return to the true breath of life. Part 2. The ego's resistance and the cycle of suffering. But it is precisely when we begin to recognize the beauty of uncertainty that another part of us trembles in rebellion. That is the ego, which still believes that without holding the reins, we will dissolve. And from here, a silent war begins. At the deepest level, every human carries a primal fear, the fear of losing the self. The ego, the conscious sense of I am I, is fragile, small, and lives in the obsession to prove its existence. That is why, when life falls into uncertainty, when the familiar crumbles, the ego immediately contracts, resists, and begins erecting countless defense mechanisms to protect its illusion of control. But ironically, the more it tries to protect, the more it imprisons itself in an invisible prison of suffering. The ego, in Jung's language, is the persona, the mask we wear to adapt to the world. It is necessary. Without it, we could not orient ourselves, could not work, could not exist in society. But the problem arises when we identify ourselves with that mask, believing we are the role we are playing. Then, any change, job loss, betrayal, failure, or simply the feeling of no longer being certain, makes us feel as if our very being is disintegrating. And so, to avoid that pain, the ego activates its resistance mechanism. It denies, controls, rationalizes, and builds sophisticated defensive walls. But what is pushed away does not disappear. It only retreats into the unconscious, waiting to erupt more powerfully. Look at modern life. We are constantly in a state of fleeing the feeling of uncontrollability. When anxious, we plunge into work. When lonely, we sink into social media. When afraid, we label it positive to comfort ourselves. But each such action, instead of liberating, only tightens the bonds of resistance. Jung called this the shadow of the ego, the part of us that refuses to acknowledge our limitations. It wants perfection, wants certainty, wants never to be weak. But it is precisely in trying to eliminate the shadow that we nourish it. Because everything denied in consciousness becomes living energy in the unconscious. It then seeks expression through emotions, behaviors, and dreams. Jung once compared psychological development to the journey of the sun. Morning is the time the ego is born, rising to its radiant peak at noon, symbolizing success, reason, power. But then gradually it must set, entering the darkness of the unconscious, to learn surrender, to be reborn. The problem is, most of us do not want that sun to set. We want it to stay high. But surrender to the illusion that we can control it. But most people never reach that door. They are trapped in the cycle of suffering. The more they fear losing control, the more they control. The more they control, the more they are disappointed. The more disappointed, the tighter they grip. Like trying to grasp water in the hand, the harder you squeeze, the more it slips through the fingers. Each time we believe, just a little more effort, and everything will be fine, we are taking another turn in that maze. The ego does not understand that peace does not come from fixation, but from the capacity to accept change. If in these lines you see yourself somewhere, in tears, in the resistance, or in the fleeting moment of longing to let go, leave a small sign. Write down a feeling, a question, or a moment when you realized you were fighting against life itself. In psychotherapy, Jung once observed, those with chronic anxiety often share one trait. They do not accept their own imperfection. They do not allow themselves to be weak, to be wrong, or not to know. It is that very attitude that makes the unconscious erupt more forcefully through dreams, symptoms, or existential crises. For the soul cannot endure being ignored for too long. It will find a way to make you listen at any cost. Sometimes through a failure. Sometimes through a pain that seems meaningless. The ego's resistance is instinctual, but overcoming it is the deepest art of living that a human can learn. For that is when we stop seeing ourselves as the center of the universe, stop believing that everything must operate according to our will. We begin to recognize there is a greater order, a deeper intelligence directing it all. And our task is not to control that flow, but to learn to merge with it. Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And perhaps nothing bears clearer witness to that than the very journey of overcoming the ego's resistance. The journey each person must undertake if they wish to find true freedom. Part 3. How to live with uncertainty. But the strange thing is, sometimes precisely when we are exhausted from trying to hold on, life gently opens up. When we stop resisting, stop straining to understand everything, things seem to become more breathable. Perhaps that is when the soul begins to whisper a lesson the ego has never grasped. That peace does not come from control, but from the capacity to live alongside the unpredictable. Number 1. Letting go of the illusion of control. There is an irony in human psychology that Carl Jung saw very clearly. We do not truly fear the future. We only fear losing the ability to control the future. What makes us anxious is not the event that might happen, but the feeling that I cannot do anything to stop it. It is that very feeling, the imagined helplessness, that is the root of all bewilderment. Humans can endure pain, but it is very hard to tolerate not knowing. And so, instead of learning to walk through the fog, we try to dispel it, creating the illusion that we can make life transparent, orderly, and predictable. But that is the mind's sweetest and most dangerous illusion. You can see this everywhere. The person addicted to planning everything, the one who cannot rest for fear of falling behind, the one who always needs assurance that others love them, or the one who dares not change jobs even though they know they are exhausted. They live in the rhythm of rationalized tension, as if stopping the control would make everything collapse. But in truth, what collapses is not the world, but the illusion of power they have built themselves. And the strange thing is, only when that illusion shatters do we begin to truly see life, not through the ego's lens, but with the soul's raw, free gaze. Jung once wrote, "What you resist persists." When we try to grip life tightly, we make it contract. Like someone trying to sleep, the more they force themselves to sleep, the farther sleep retreats. Peace is the same. It does not come by manipulating everything into stability, but by ceasing to fight against change. In analytical therapy, Jung realized that there are turning points in every person's life when all rational efforts fail, when plans collapse, when beliefs disintegrate, and it is precisely then that one is forced to learn the lesson of letting go. But letting go in Jung is never surrender. It is not passive acceptance of fate, but conscious surrender. Surrender because one recognizes that there are parts of life that operate by a deeper intelligence, the intelligence of the unconscious, of the natural flow of living, of what he called the self, the central essence of the soul. When we stop forcing ourselves to understand everything, we begin to be guided from within. A clear example is those who fall into a midlife crisis. When what once formed their identity, career, roles, and definitions of success suddenly becomes empty, they feel they have lost control. But in psychological depth, that is not a collapse, but a transformation initiated by the soul. It forces the ego to relinquish its dominance so that the true self can be born. Just like a snake must shed its skin, if it clings to the old one, it will suffocate. Thus, letting go of the illusion of control is not just an action, but a rite of spiritual maturity. The ego will not like this. It will find every way to restore the old order. New plans, new goals, new reasons to believe everything is still in our hands. But that is only the endless game of the ego. Jung believed that only when a person dares to face the irredeemable moment, when all strategies of reason reach a dead end, can true change begin. For the soul can only speak when the ego falls silent. Letting go of the illusion of control does not mean stopping action. On the contrary, it opens up a completely new way of acting, not from fear, but from presence. Another door opens, a door leading inward. And that is precisely the realm Jung invites us into, the world of the unconscious, where dreams, symbols, and inner images become the language of the soul. For if reason is the voice of the ego, then dreams are the whisper of the unconscious. Jung did not see dreams as a random sequence of images or a byproduct of a tired mind. For him, each dream is a letter sent from the deepest part of ourselves, where the unconscious is trying to communicate, balance, and guide consciousness. When the ego is too rigid, when we stray from the soul's natural orbit, the unconscious speaks through symbols, through images, through metaphorical emotions that logical language cannot grasp. And if we learn to listen, those dreams become silent guides, helping us walk through uncertainty. Jung believed that symbols are the bridge between the known and the unknown. In modern life, we often take everything literally, gradually losing the ability to read symbols, something ancient humans lived with naturally. For Jung, The unconscious does not speak in arguments, but in images. The snake symbolizes rebirth. The sea is the depth of the soul. The house is a symbol of the self. When a symbol appears repeatedly in dreams, in art, or in emotions, it is not a coincidence, but the unconscious calling us back. Imagine you dream of falling freely through the air. The natural reaction is fear. But if you pause to reflect, perhaps the unconscious is showing you the truth that you have clung too tightly to things no longer solid. That fall is not punishment, but an invitation to let go. In the Jungian sense, dreams never aim to terrify. They heal by showing us what consciousness dares not see. The wonder is that the symbols of the unconscious do not only come in sleep. They exist in fleeting emotions, in images that obsess us without reason, in art that makes us cry, though we do not know why. That is how the unconscious communicates with us, reminding us that something inside needs to be understood. One person may listen to a sad song over and over because somewhere in its melody, their soul finds what has not been said. Another may be intensely drawn to deep blue because the unconscious is seeking to lead them to a lost peace. Jung saw symbolic images as the gateway to inner transformation. When we observe those images with an attitude of respect, without judgment, without over-interpreting, we are establishing a new relationship with the unconscious. He called this process active imagination, the state in which one allows the unconscious to express itself, then dialogues with it like a friend. When you draw, write, dream, or even converse with the images arising in the mind, you are not indulging in fantasy, but allowing your soul to speak. Active imagination is not wishful daydreaming. It is a profound method of healing. Instead of trying to control emotions, we observe them. Instead of denying fear, we let it speak. For example, when you dream of being chased, instead of just fearing, ask, "Who is chasing me?" It may be a part of you craving attention. The unconscious never wants to destroy us. It only wants to be heard. And when heard, it becomes an ally, no longer an enemy. In a noisy world, taking time to record dreams, draw the images arising in the mind, or simply sit still to feel what is moving inside, is a revolutionary act. It is how we restore the bridge between consciousness and unconscious, between ego and soul. Jung believed, only when these two worlds meet does a person truly become whole. And when we become whole, uncertainty is no longer a threat. It becomes fertile ground for the soul to grow. For in the depths, dreams are not just a place to escape reality. They are where our truest reality lives, breathes, waits to be recognized. When you learn to observe the unconscious through dreams and symbols, you no longer need to control life from the outside, because you have begun to understand it from within. And it is then that uncertainty is no longer a frightening night, but a dark sky sparkling with signals from the soul, lighting your way forward with quiet faith, that you do not need to know everything to still go in the right direction. Number 3. Dialoguing with the shadow. Observing the unconscious through dreams and symbols is how we listen to the soul speaking in the language of images. But that journey only truly begins when we dare to dialogue with the part we often want to forget, the part Jung called the shadow. For every dream, every symbol, every hidden emotion leads us to the same point, the dwelling place of what we deny about ourselves. If the unconscious is the ocean, then the shadow is the deepest water, containing the aspects the ego refuses to accept. yet which are precisely the source of the living energy we have lost. Jung once said, "The sole purpose of human existence is to kindle a light in the darkness of mere being." We often think maturity means knowing how to eliminate the dark side, but in truth, that is a naive illusion. The dark side does not vanish just because we ignore it. It only waits for us in the shadows, incarnating as anxiety, anger, envy, or unconscious behaviors we do not want to admit. As long as we have not dared to look at our shadow, it will continue to control us from behind the scenes with invisible strings. In truth, the shadow is not evil. It is simply the abandoned part within us. As children, we learn to live, to be loved, to be accepted. Each time we are scolded for anger, we hide the anger. Each time we are criticized for weakness, we don the armor knocking at the door. What am I protecting? When you feel shame, instead of hastily fleeing, ask, who am I afraid will see who I am? For beneath every extreme emotion lies an unmet need. In therapy, Jung often guided patients to converse with their shadow images through the technique of active imagination. A woman recounted that she often dreamed of being stalked in the dark by a strange woman. Instead of fear, she was instructed to imagine sitting down and talking with that woman. At first, she only saw hostility, but gradually the image said, "I am the part of you that has had to be strong for too long." From there, she realized she had never allowed herself to be weak or sad, for fear of being despised by others. When she accepted that part, the nightmares ceased. This is the healing power of dialoguing with the shadow. It does not destroy, but integrates. The modern world makes us believe that light is good, darkness is bad. But Jung reminds us that light only has meaning when shaped by darkness. Just as night is needed to see the stars, the soul also needs shadow to clearly see its own light. Each time we accept a shadow part of ourselves, we expand the boundaries of consciousness. The more light we shine inward, the less there is to fear. For fear only arises in the dimness. However, dialoguing with the shadow is never easy. It requires us to accept that we are not perfect, that at times we are selfish, weak, envious, or even cruel. But Jung believed that it is precisely this acceptance that forms the foundation of true compassion. Only one who has touched their own darkness can empathize with the darkness of others. The one who has never confronted their own bad side will always rush to judge. The one who has sat in their own night, conversely, will know how to extend a hand to others in silence. Dialoguing with the shadow is also learning to tolerate uncertainty about oneself. We no longer try to define ourselves as good or bad, right or wrong, light or dark. We simply are a person becoming, a developing being, ceaselessly changing, needing no completeness to still be worthy of living. And it is precisely when we stop trying to become good and begin to become real that peace can blossom. Number 4. Practicing non-judgmental self-observation. Dialoguing with the shadow helps us see the hidden parts within ourselves. But to truly live with them, we need a subtler capacity, the ability to self-observe without judgment. If dialoguing with the shadow is the step of daring to look, then self-observation is the art of looking without intervening, witnessing oneself as if sitting outside the mind, observing all its movements without trying to fix them. When we confront fear, emotions, or inner chaos, the first instinct is always to react, analyze, resist, or hastily conclude. But that very reaction clouds the clarity of awareness. Non-judgmental self-observation means learning to stay in the experience without immediately labeling it as good or bad. Like watching a rainy sky, we only see the drops falling without needing to say whether that rain should or should not exist. The mind is the same. It rains thoughts, storms emotions, wins doubts, and all we need to do is observe without trying to dispel them. This practice can begin very simply. Imagine you are going through a chaotic day, work in disarray, emotions surging, mind spinning with anxiety. Instead of telling yourself, "I shouldn't be like this," pause for a moment, breathe, and simply recognize, this is fear arising. Not, "I am afraid." Just, there is fear here. That small shift in language makes a profound difference. When you separate yourself from the emotion without denying it, you stop being controlled by it. An interesting example comes from Jung's therapeutic work. He once instructed his patients to record their emotions during the day, but without labeling or explaining them. After a few weeks, they began to notice something. Emotions come and go like the weather. No emotion lasts forever, and that very capacity for observation helped them regain stability. Jung called this the witness attitude of the soul, the state in which we are no longer victims of the psyche, but compassionate observers. The difference between judgment and observation lies in the energy. Judgment carries resistance. It separates us from ourselves. I shouldn't be sad. I must be stronger. Observation does not. Observation is full acceptance. I am sad, and that is okay. When we observe like that, emotions are allowed to pass through. But when we judge, we hold them back. Thus, the paradox is, the more we want to escape an emotion, the more we are trapped in it. The more we allow it to exist, the more it naturally dissolves. One way to practice this is to turn every crisis into a laboratory of awareness. When anxiety rises, instead of immediately seeking a solution, ask, what shape does this fear have? Where is it in my body? When angry, feel it as physical energy, perhaps heat in the chest, tightness in the throat. Observe it instead of arguing with it. Gradually you will realize, behind every emotion is a message. Fear often hides a longing for safety. Anger hides a sense of hurt. Shame hides a desire for acceptance. When you look deeply enough, every emotion becomes a gateway to understanding, no longer an enemy. In Jungian philosophy, The practice of non-judgmental self-observation is a form of psychological living. You need only a small but enduring commitment. Each day, a few minutes of silence, slow breathing, noting a dream, a symbol, a feeling not yet named. Each time fear rises, simply say, "I am here," and pause half a beat. From those simple gestures, a different order will crystallize, the order of natural alignment between inner and outer. Do not rush to find a new version to replace the old self. Let life itself testify to your transformation through how you listen, choose, and be present. If you need a sign to begin, here it is. Tonight, before sleep, turn off the light 5 minutes earlier. Write one line for yourself to read tomorrow. Then answer this question with gentle honesty. Tomorrow, where do I want to live more slowly? Let that answer lead you onward. If this path touches you, leave a small trace, like subscribe to the channel so as not to miss the next journeys into the inner world. A short comment, a question, or even a dream image is enough to nourish this dialogue and let it grow. We are learning to live with uncertainty, and every sincere voice is a small lamp. Thank you for being here. See you in the next video. In silence, countless people walk through life with shoulders weighed down, carrying pains that have never truly belonged to them. To their family, friends, and loved ones, they are souls rich in compassion, always sacrificing, always ready to listen and shoulder the load. But deep inside, something is fracturing. They are gradually submerged in the suffering of others, to the point of forgetting where their own pain resides. At first glance, this appears to be empathy, a form of nobility. But Jung reveals that concealed behind that beauty lies a dangerous shadow. It is not wholly love, but an unconscious mechanism born from wounds that have never been healed. We imagine it to be love, only to find it is mere dependency. We imagine it to be kindness, only to discover it is a sophisticated prison. So, what truly happens when you cease carrying the pain of others and begin returning to each person the responsibility for their own life? Carl Jung believed that moment marks the turning point. It is not coldness, but inner freedom to love without dissolving, to empathize without losing one's essence. This journey will not be easy. It demands that you dare to dismantle the auxiliary ego that has shielded you for so many years. Dare to confront the emptiness and the fear of abandonment. Dare to withstand the reproachful gazes from those accustomed to your unconditional sacrifices. But it is precisely in that confrontation that you discover a different kind of strength, the strength of one who dares to be themselves. The question is, are you ready to release the burdens that do not belong to you to embark on a truly free life? Number 1. The psychological root. The nameless pain begins from childhood. When Jung speaks of human suffering, he always emphasizes a simple yet ruthless truth. Many tragedies in adult life do not emerge anew, but are cracks from childhood that still ooze blood in the unconscious. Behind the behavior of embracing others' pain lie distant memories, moments when the innocent child had to shoulder a responsibility far too heavy, the responsibility of maintaining stability for the entire family. And that tragedy begins in homes that seem utterly ordinary, where meals are still plentiful, where laughter still echoes, but beneath the surface flow undercurrents of chaos and unease flow. Imagine a child living in a home where the mother frequently sinks into states of sadness or isolation, or the father alternates between gentleness and inexplicable rage. To an adult, these might be mere everyday mood shifts. But to a child, the world is not yet safe enough to distinguish that is someone else's affair. Lacking the ability to erect psychological boundaries, they unconsciously view soothing the father's anger or wiping away the mother's tears as their own duty. And from there, they enter a silent, lifelong penance, learning to anticipate others' emotions as a means of self-protection. Carl Jung called this the formation of the auxiliary ego, a kind of false self constructed like armor. But this armor does not shield the child from harm. It merely forces them to conceal their true nature. The child learns to be good, to not be a bother, to smile while harboring deep-seated fear within. To keep their parents at ease, they compel themselves to become precocious children, enduring early, sacrificing early. But in that very moment, the process of detachment from their authentic self begins. There is something peculiar. Adults often do not clearly remember their childhood, but the body and mind never forget. A grown woman who always feels the responsibility to care for everyone is often the little girl who had to wipe her mother's tears at age 7. A man who never dares to say no to others is often the child who strained to listen for every sound in the house, just to gauge whether father would rage that day. Those memories, when repressed, do not vanish. They flow underground, forming unconscious structures, and one day they will steer your life without your awareness. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." When a child is never taught that your parents' pain is not your responsibility, they grow up with the false belief that love means bearing the load. And in adulthood, that belief becomes a life pattern. To love someone is to carry their pain. What makes this root so dangerous is that it disguises itself in the guise of kindness. Outsiders see them as good people, responsible individuals. They themselves believe they are merely loving, merely empathizing. But the truth is that the child within them has never been liberated. They do not know which emotions are theirs and which belong to others. Every sadness around them becomes a cry for help they must answer, because in the unconscious, refusal means guilt, abandonment, loss of love. Examples of this abound in life. A young woman who always rushes to heal her struggling boyfriend. She believes it is love, a noble sacrifice. But through Jung's lens, it is repetition. She is trying to save her lover just as she once tried to save her alcoholic father. Each time her boyfriend suffers, she feels a part of her duty activated. It is not love, it is unconscious memory operating in the present. Or a young man who always chooses unstable girlfriends, only to exhaust himself carrying their emotions. He believes he is especially sensitive, more loving than others. But in reality, he is reenacting his old role. The child who had to continually please his mother, console her after each abandonment by his father. He does not love his current girlfriend as an adult. He only loves as a child who has never been freed from the loop. This reveals that the root of carrying others' pain is the blurring of ego boundaries, formed very early on. In the first years of life, when we do not yet know who we are, living for others becomes the only way to feel safe. It is a survival strategy, but as we grow, that strategy turns into psychological chains. You might ask, why do many children endure difficult circumstances, yet grow up able to set healthy boundaries? Jung believed the difference lies in whether that child was ever affirmed in their selfhood. A hug, a phrase like, "It's not your fault," a gaze affirming, "You are allowed to be yourself." Sometimes that is enough for the child to retain their essence. But without any of it, they learn to trade, losing themselves to retain love. This is why so many adults live in ambiguity. They do everything right, they are always good, always sacrificing, yet deep inside feel empty, adrift, because they were never taught that their worth does not lie in carrying others' pain. And as Jung said, the true self is buried beneath the auxiliary ego, in the shadows, awaiting the day it is called by name. Number 2. The wounded healer syndrome. As we trace the trail back to a childhood rife with instability, we realize the auxiliary ego is merely the outer mask. Deeper still, a complex psychological mechanism forms, which Carl Jung termed the wounded healer syndrome. What makes this syndrome dangerous is its subtlety. It does not manifest in overt pains, but disguises itself in the form of kindness. A person afflicted with the wounded healer complex is often praised by society. He lives for others. She has a heart of gold. He is always there when needed. But Jung warns that this kindness does not always stem purely from love. It often arises from an unconscious desire to evade the shadows within oneself. When we rush to heal others, it may be a way to avoid sitting alone with wounds that have never been touched. Jung saw through this mechanism and called it a deceptive exchange. The healer imagines they are giving love, but in truth, they are seeking a temporary balm for the silent ache inside. Saving others becomes a form of soul numbing. And like all numbing agents, its effect is fleeting. When there is no one left to save, they find themselves hollow, purposeless, unsure of whom to live with. The wounded healer syndrome also manifests in work. Many choose caregiving professions, nurses, doctors, therapists, teachers, not just out of passion, but from an unconscious drive, the need to save others, to save oneself. And if they remain unawakened, that work becomes a mirror reflecting their deepest wounds. The nurse was exhausted from tending patients while neglecting herself. The therapist was absorbed in others' pain while fleeing their own childhood memories. In such cases, helping is no longer love, but an escape from the self in a noble guise. Jung emphasized that this is a trap of the soul. rejected. But consider, if a relationship only exists when you always say yes, when you always sacrifice yourself, is that true love? Or merely an unconscious bargain where you trade freedom for acceptance? Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." This is a quote worth pausing for. Breathe slowly, close your eyes for a few seconds, and try asking yourself, how many times have I chosen to lose myself just to be accepted? How many times have I called that love, when it was really just fear of abandonment? Don't rush to answer. Just let the question settle quietly like a pebble dropping to the bottom of the water. You will see ripples spreading, awakening memories, emotions, and those parts you have long avoided. Setting boundaries is like building a dam in a river. At first, the water crashes against the dam, building pressure, foaming, creating a furious roar. Those downstream grow angry because the familiar flow is blocked, because the water no longer rushes to them easily. But if the dam holds firm, what happens? The water begins to accumulate, forming a reservoir. And from that reservoir, new energy is generated, electricity is produced, water is regulated, and life is sustained more sustainably. Boundaries are the same. Initially, they provoke resistance, frustration, but in the long term, they create a sustainable inner resource, nourishing yourself while giving purposefully and more powerfully. Observe an example at work. An employee who always takes on colleagues' tasks because he can't bear to refuse. The result is exhaustion, but he is praised as reliable. One day, he decides to set boundaries, only taking on his own responsibilities. Immediately, he is distanced by colleagues, labeled no longer enthusiastic. But if he persists, he will realize that this change eliminates exploitative relationships and retains those based on respect. Jung calls this moment a necessary crisis, for without collapse, there is no rebirth. When you set boundaries, part of the old world will shatter. Those accustomed to dependency will drift away. Relationships based on carrying will collapse. But that is not loss, but purification. What remains after the storm is truly yours. It is important to understand that boundaries are not refusing love. On the contrary, it is the most mature way to love. Because when you refuse to carry for them, you allow the other to face their shadows. You believe they are strong enough to carry themselves. And this belief is the true act of empowerment. Whereas if you keep embracing their pain for them, you are robbing them of the chance to grow. This is the paradox Jung often mentioned. True love is not redemption, but entrusting others with responsibility for themselves. Setting boundaries also means returning to confront yourself. No longer hiding in the role of savior, you are forced to look into the void, the fears, and old wounds. This is the greatest challenge, facing the shadow. But Jung believed that only in that confrontation does the process of individuation begin. You gradually realize that your value does not lie in caring for others, but in existing as a complete individual. If previously you lived by the logic, I am valuable when I save others, now you enter a new logic. I am valuable simply because I am me. This is a root reversal. It is like removing a mask worn too long to finally see your true face in the mirror. At first, it will feel strange, even frightening, but gradually, bit by bit, you will learn to love that face, to love your true self. Number 5, the process of liberation, individuation. When you have mustered the courage to set boundaries, When you refuse to continue being the vessel that holds others' pain, a profound change begins to unfold. But this is not merely a shift in relationships. It is a transformation at the very core of the soul. Jung called this process individuation, the journey toward becoming a complete being, no longer dominated by imposed roles or unconscious wounds. It is the path of liberation that Jung regarded as the greatest task of human life. Individuation does not mean isolation, withdrawal, or becoming cold toward the world. On the contrary, it is the ability to be present in the world without losing oneself. You no longer live to be needed, to please, to carry the load. You live as a complete individual, clearly knowing what is yours and what belongs to others. And it is precisely from that wholeness that you can offer true love. Love untainted by dependency or blind sacrifice. Jung believed that to traverse individuation, one must enter into dialogue with one's own shadow. For so long, we have used carrying others as a way to flee from the shadow. When you refuse to carry, that shadow emerges. The fear of abandonment, unhealed childhood memories, the sense of worthlessness. This is the moment when many want to retreat to the old loop, for they cannot bear the confrontation. But if you dare to proceed, you will realize that the shadow is not the enemy. It is the part of you that has been disowned, the part that needs integration to make you whole. In practice, this process often manifests in small but powerful changes. A man who once never dared to refuse now learns to say no without guilt. A mother who once forgot herself in the role of caregiver now begins to carve out time for personal hobbies, for private joys. These seemingly simple actions are evidence of a core shift. They have begun living from the center of their being, rather than from the auxiliary shadow. When you have found your essence, every action arises from a steadfast center. You love not for recognition, but because love flows naturally. You create not for admiration, but as the authentic expression of the soul. The process of individuation never ends. It is not a destination, but a continuous journey. Each time you confront a new fear, a new relationship, you have the opportunity to become more whole. But the first step is always liberation from the old role. Cease carrying others' pain. Cease dissolving the self. Cease seeking value in being needed. From there, You step into your own life, a life that Jung called living with the whole being. And as individuation begins, the world around you changes too. Relationships, connections, the way you love and are loved, all take on a new hue. So what truly happens when you cease carrying others' pain and live as a complete individual? Number 6. Transformation. When you stop carrying others' pain. When the process of individuation has begun, an inevitable transformation occurs. Not only within you, but the world around you shifts as well. Jung believed that the personal psyche and external environment are intimately linked. When the ego changes, the surrounding system must adapt. Thus, when you stop carrying pain that does not belong to you, not only do you find freedom, but relationships, connections, and your very presence in life take on a new form. The first thing that happens is the collapse of dependency-based relationships. Those accustomed to you always listening, always sacrificing, will react fiercely. They will accuse you of changing, of being insensitive, selfish. But in truth, what they lose is not your love, but the emotional control they once imposed on you. This is a shock for both sides. For you, it is the first time you dare to hold on to yourself. For them, it is the first time they must face their own unprocessed pain. A man once accustomed to sharing every crisis with his girlfriend, believing she would always carry it for him, suddenly feels adrift when she refuses that emotional responsibility. He becomes angry, bewildered, and even tries to pull her back into the old circle. But if that woman remains steadfast, change will occur. Either the relationship dissolves, or it is reborn on a more mature foundation. This is the principle Jung emphasized. What is not authentic will collapse. What is real will endure and grow stronger. But do not think the change is only a loss. In truth, it is purification. When you stop carrying others' pain, you begin to see clearly who loves you for you and who stays only for your sacrifices. Relationships sustained by your constant yes will fade. But the ones that remain, those that do not require you to erase yourself, will become more genuine and profound. Imagine a forest once overgrown with countless parasitic vines. When you begin cutting them away, at first the forest looks barren, empty, but gradually light penetrates and true saplings have a chance to grow. Relationships are the same. When you remove parasitic ties, you create space for authentic connections to emerge. And only in that space can true love be born. Love without dependency, without pretense, arising from freedom. The change occurs not only externally, but internally as well. When no longer dominated by others' emotions, you begin to experience a new form of energy. Before, your mind was always vigilant, like a radar constantly scanning to guess what others think, feel. Now that radar shuts off, and you reclaim a rare stillness. In that stillness, you rediscover small joys long forgotten. An afternoon reading a book without guilt, a morning sleeping in without fear of reproach, a smile born from true peace rather than pleasing others. Someone who has lived a lifetime in carrying will feel strange stepping into this state for the first time. At first, it is emptiness, then liberation. Like removing a backpack worn for years, your back feels light, your shoulders ache. But after a few days, the body adjusts to the freedom. The shoulder pain gives way to vitality. The mind is the same. After an addiction to carrying, it must learn to live only for itself. And in that gradual adjustment, new energy is reborn. Another profound change is in how you express love. Before, Your love was tied to carrying, sacrificing, and enduring for others. Now, your love transforms into a clear presence. You are there, you listen, you share, but you do not do for, do not feel for. This may seem small, but it makes all the difference. For true love does not require dissolution, but the meeting of two whole beings. Jung once said, "Wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration." When you stop carrying others' pain, you are not severing compassion, but integrating yourself so that compassion becomes clear, undistorted by the need to be needed. Before, you were like a candle burning itself out to illuminate others, gradually fading. Now, you become a steady flame, unextinguished by external winds, able to light many other candles without losing your own light. This is the quality of an individual who has passed through liberation, giving without loss, present without dissolving. No one is born to be the vessel for the world's pain. You are born to have a center, a silent, luminous place strong enough to stand firm before any emotional wave that passes. From today, turn freedom into a subtle discipline. Each morning, set a small boundary. Each noon, return an expectation that is not yours. Each evening, name an emotion as yours and yours alone. When someone comes to you, you can offer not a shoulder to cry on forever, but a mirror to see themselves. When someone falls, you can stand beside without substituting. That is the quality of mature love. Gentle yet firm, close yet undissolved. If these sharings have